Hello, I am Ruby Falconer and today's date is December 20th, 2020. This is a Shamanic Egyptian Astrological update for the week ahead. Well, I'm doing a few things differently today. I'm in a different location, hence a different backdrop. Also, today is Sunday. I usually do these updates on Monday, but because tomorrow, December 21st, is such an important day, I wanted to get this posted today. I did that last week too. I posted the weekly update on Sunday because the next day, the 14th, we were exiting the tunnel between the worlds. December 14th was a total solar eclipse. 2 weeks before, on November 30th, we had a penumbral lunar eclipse, and the time between eclipses represents a transition, a tunnel, a birth canal between two phases of experience. So we left a phase of experience that began on July 4th, ended on November 30th, entered the tunnel for 2 weeks, came out on the 14th, and now a week later, we're moving into a very important expression of what it's going to be like in this particular time ahead. This revolves around the fact that tomorrow is the solstice, and also it's the exact conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn in the sign Aquarius. Saturn moved into Aquarius this last week, the night of Wednesday, the 16th, and yesterday on the 19th, on Saturday, Jupiter moved into Aquarius. So they're both in Aquarius now. They're about 7 degrees away from Pluto. They're not going back there. What this represents is the end of the Great Shift Alignment, which I've been talking about all year. The Great Shift Alignment began in January, and it has represented the dismantling of the structure of society and our personal structures as we have known it. That process is now complete. We do have this Wednesday, we're going to have Mars moving into an exact square to Pluto. Mars will be moving into a conjunction with Eris, which is their sidekicks. Eris is the Greek goddess of strife and discord. In the Greek and Roman myth, Mars, Ares to the Greeks, Mars to the Romans, is the god of war. And these two always show up if there's a battle in the Greek and Roman myths. In the Egyptian pantheon, Mars is Set, the warrior king. And he has been very much a player, particularly in this last phase of experience with the Great Shift Alignment. Mars has been in his own sign. He's been moving through a relationship to all 3 of the planets, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. He was retrograde for 2 months, from mid-September to mid-November. And so the energy of Mars, the warrior king, has been very, very strong. And it's still here. We still have this final alignment between Mars with Eris and in a square to Pluto. So as I'm recording this, that energy is very much still here. And things are going to be shifting. 2021 is going to be a very different year than 2020. It will have its own challenges, it will have its own opportunities, but the energy of the year is going to be very different. And one of the pieces that's important to recognize with where we are right now is with the completion of the Great Shift Alignment, its work is done. Its work has been to destroy existing structures. That work is done. So now the opportunity and the job, the task, so to speak, is going to be to begin to build new structures. And that's where some of the questions come up, is what those structures will look like and what that process will be. So let's talk specifically about tomorrow and why it's so important and why it has such an important symbolic element to it. There's been a tremendous amount of things showing up on the internet about this conjunction. Many people feel it's the beginning of the age of Aquarius. I don't necessarily see it that way. I think that it's hard to know exactly when the exact date when the age of Aquarius begins. On many levels, I think that the age of Aquarius has been showing up and has been making itself apparent for 250 years, since 1784 when Uranus was discovered. Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, and it took a product of the Aquarian realm, a telescope. Aquarius rules technology and science. It took a product of Aquarius to find Uranus. And that particular time, 1784, parallels so many things that are Aquarian in nature. The Industrial Revolution, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the death of the idea of the divine right of kings, and the birth of the concept of democracy, which has not been fulfilled in many ways. But before that time, there was no such thing. And you can go back to Greece. Greece had a form of democracy. But in the intervening times, countries were ruled by kings who were considered to be divine in some way. So there was a huge separation between common people and the rulers. And although we have not achieved perfection in this area, things are much different now. And all of this is an Aquarian concept. The idea that we have a group and that everybody within this group is equal. Again, we haven't pulled this off, but just the idea that we have that philosophical perception is very different than what happened, what was in existence before 1784, before the end of the 18th century. So I tend to feel that the dawning of the age of Aquarius was actually back then, and that with every step forward that we've been making our planet a smaller planet, most of these technology, products of technology, whether it's advances in transportation, advances in communications, the one thing after another, and now, what we have with social media, it keeps making the world smaller and smaller and smaller. And that is the Aquarian ideal. Aquarius represents the place in the zodiac where we have the ultimate group experience. As the astrological wheel, the wheel of the zodiac, is all about the opposites. Every sign, it's a wheel. And so every sign has an opposite sign. And the opposite signs are complementary. They inform each other. And you can really see this if you look at the sign Aquarius and look at its opposite sign, Leo. Leo represents the point in the wheel where we have the first expression of a whole and complete individual. And this person is an individual. Aquarius represents the point in the wheel where we have the first expression of a whole and complete collective, and it is a collective. Now, these two are complementary, but they are also opposite. If one is totally and fully an individual, you're not going to be part of a collective. If we are completely submerged into a collective, we're not going to be to be expressing ourselves as individuals. This is the challenge of the Aquarian age, is how to operate as a collective. And this does mean one planet, how to operate as a planet and yet still respect, acknowledge, and support the needs not only of individual cultures, but also of individuals, to protect individual rights. And if you think about it, that's a lot of the struggle that's going on right now. So in many ways, we have the elements of the Aquarian age very present, but we also have elements of the Piscean age as well. Pisces is about the disintegration of everything that has come before, and we are continually seeing that disintegrating quality of Pisces taking place as well. So whether we're in the age of Aquarius or still in the transition phase or in the very beginnings, I don't know. I can't begin to say. But I do watch as we continually have astrological and astronomical events, and also things that are happening in society that are taking us further and further into this place of experiencing ourselves as part of a collective, and that collective getting larger. It's not just our country. It's not just whether we live in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, or whether we live, in the east or the west, that we have similar sorts of experiences, and that we're reacting to these sorts of experiences in similar sorts of ways. That's very Aquarian, and it is science and technology that makes that possible. And we also then have people wanting to proclaim their individual rights and their ability to separate themselves from the collective in order to express their individual lives. It's a very interesting time that we live in. So let's talk about what happens with the solstice. The experience of the solstice is very dependent upon location. If you live in the northern hemisphere, you're going to be experiencing the winter solstice. It's cold. If you live in the southern hemisphere, you're going to experience the summer solstice. It's hot. And it's a very different kind of experience. You have the longest night in the north, you have the longest day in the south. Now, our experience of this depends on our location. But if we are able in our imagination to step off of our planet and look at what's actually happening, we understand, we can see that this is not really a location-specific experience. This is a planetary experience. If we have the sun, the sun's here, and we have Earth, the Earth is tilted. This time of year, the tilt of the Earth for the northern hemisphere is away from the sun. So we in the northern hemisphere get less sun, which means our days are shorter and our nights are longer. The southern hemisphere is tilted toward the sun, so those in the south have longer days and shorter nights. Now when we get to June, the Earth will have moved to the other side of the sun, and the northern hemisphere is now tilted toward the sun. So the northern hemisphere will now get longer days and shorter nights, and the southern hemisphere will get longer nights and shorter days. But it just depends on where you are on the Earth, and also where the Earth is in its orbit around the sun. Now, when we're experiencing this on planet Earth, we don't see the bigger picture. But when we're able to step back and look at our planet as one planet, as a whole, we see what's actually going on. This is the nature of duality. We talk a lot and see a lot of things that are posted on the internet about unity consciousness, which is the dissolution of the illusion of duality and understanding that we are all one planet. What happens, what affects us here on one part of the planet affects everybody else as well. It's been very clear with the coronavirus. It doesn't respect boundaries. It's affected everyone on the planet. We've all had this experience, and it's dismantled all of our structures, including our personal structures in one way or another. So it's been a collective experience, a planetary experience that we have all gone through, and that's happened during this great shift alignment. Now, the second thing that's happening tomorrow that is also an expression of duality in its resolution has to do with Jupiter and Saturn. In the language of Shamanic Egyptian Astrology, Jupiter is Horus, the young king. Saturn is Sobek, the old king. So again, we have a duality. We have youth versus age, old age. Jupiter, in traditional astrology, is the principle of expansion. Saturn is the principle of contraction. Again, another opposition, two opposites of a pole, a polarity. One of the ways that I can best express, or I have expressed, how the relationship between Jupiter and Saturn works is we breathe in, we bring air in, we expand our lungs. We exhale, we contract our lungs. Now, we have to do both. When you put them together, that's the breath. What tends to happen, and this shows up in astrology a lot, is people like Jupiter better than Saturn. People like Horus better than Sobek. They don't like the restriction, they don't like the limitation, they don't like the constraints of the old king, they don't like the way he hangs on to power, they don't like when we are under a transit of Saturn, or if you were born with an aspect of Saturn strong in your chart, you don't like that restriction and limitation that comes with it. A lot of people prefer the expansion, the enthusiasm, the lightness of being that comes with youth, that comes with Horus. But if we go back to the breath, you can't have one without the other. You can't inhale and not exhale, right? Eventually you're going to have to breathe out. You can't breathe out and not breathe in. And that's the lesson. That's the energy around Jupiter and Horus, is that Jupiter and Saturn, you can't have one without the other. And in the Egyptian pantheon, Jupiter or Horus and Sobek are at odds with one another. Sobek is an older version of Set. In the traditional Egyptian myth, Horus and Set get in a battle after Set kills Osiris, Pluto, who is Horus's father. After Set kills him, they get in a battle that lasts for centuries. Now, eventually, of course, Set is going to mature. And when he matures into a wise old king. He is Sobek, who is the crocodile-headed god of ancient Egypt. He is the reptilian brain in many ways. He hangs on because he wants us to survive. He's like that aspect of our ego identity that doesn't want to change, wants to hang on to things as they are because he wants us to survive. So it serves a useful purpose, except when it's time to allow the new energy to come in, to allow Horus to come in. That's when we need to expand. But in order to know that we need to expand, we frequently have to feel that sense of contraction. That's the way Jupiter and Saturn operate in an astrological chart. It's interesting to acknowledge that people tend to come into life either with a stronger Jupiter or a stronger Saturn. And they will, and this isn't true 100% across the board, but I've seen it enough times that people are either tend to be more Jupiterian or they tend to be more Saturnian. And in the course of life, they have to reach for the opposite point. Those who are more Jupiterian, more Horus, have to reach for more Sobek, more Saturn. And those that are more Saturnian, more Sobek, have to reach for more Jupiter, more Horus. They have to do that in order to have the experience of wholeness. Because as long as we're only experiencing one end of the polarity, we're only seeing part of the picture. It's like, living in the northern hemisphere and only experiencing the winter solstice and not understanding that the solstice is the summer solstice as well. So it's not just my experience, it's the totality of experience. So too with Jupiter and Saturn. That's the hidden message in our conjunction tomorrow. Part of the piece that we're constantly dealing with here on Earth is the linear process of Earth. In most instances, we're either under a Jupiter transit or, responding to a Jupiter aspect, and so things are opening up, and we like that. In traditional astrology, Jupiter was often called the Great Benefic. It was considered the good luck planet. But then things spiral through. We inhale, then we have to exhale. And we then have a Saturnian aspect or a Saturnian transit, and we go through a period of constraint and restriction. A lot of people don't like that. In traditional astrology, Saturn was called the Great Malefic. But again, it's two sides of the same experience. We expand, we contract. Because the process of life is linear, and we experience these elements in a linear way, we forget to see the whole. The opportunity that we're going to have tomorrow between the solstice, which is a beautiful expression of the true nature of duality, which is that it's not a dual experience at all, it's actually a unified experience, and also this conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, where these two oppositional elements are going to come into alignment with one another, is that we have an opportunity within ourselves to experience simultaneously the processes of expansion and contraction. And so what I would like to offer today is a journey to help us experience this. And I want to say up front that this is not necessarily an easy journey to do. And you might feel frustrated. You might feel like you're not doing it right, which of course is an illusion. The objective here is to simply experience it. And it may be a journey that you want to return to at other times, because it's a sort of experience that if you do it more than once, you start to experience it in your body and understand what the actual nature of the journey is about. And when you understand it in your body, when you have a body felt experience of expansion and contraction happening simultaneously, this is a resolution of the opposites. This is a resolution of duality. And that's where we're going as a planet and as individuals. And we're not going to get there unless we as individuals begin to experience on our own. So, I invite you to take a nice deep breath. Get yourself comfortable. If you're sitting up, put your feet on the floor. Close your eyes. And nice deep breaths. Fully inhale, fully exhale. And I want you to imagine that you are standing in a column of light. It's a cylinder. And it extends far above you, up into the heavens, up into the stars. And it extends down into the earth below you, down into the core of the earth. A beautiful cylinder of light that you are standing in, or sitting, whatever's most comfortable for you in your mind's eye. And you become aware that you are not alone. And standing on either side of you are two beings. On one side is the young King Horus, and on the other side is the old King Sobek. And simultaneously, each of them reach out and they place a hand on your shoulder. So you have Horus's hand on one shoulder, Sobek's hand is resting on the other. They are here as guides, and they are here to provide you with a body-felt sense of who they are. So I invite you just to take a moment and tune in to each of them. Tune into the energy of Horus. Feel his energy through his hand that is resting on your shoulder. And tune into the energy of Sobek. Feel his hand resting on your shoulder. And now just know that these two are here. They're going to step back a little, become less noticeable. But they are here. They are with you. And I want you now to begin breathing some nice, deep, even breaths. Even on the inhale, even on the exhale. And as you breathe in this way, you become aware that the column of light that you are standing in, the cylinder that you are in, expands and contracts with your breath. So as you inhale, the cylinder expands. As you exhale, the cylinder contracts. Expands and contracts. Let's take a few breaths and feel this. And now allow this energy to reverse. What I mean by this is that as you inhale, the cylinder contracts. As you exhale, the cylinder expands. Breathe in, the cylinder contracts. Breathe out, the cylinder expands. It's as if when you inhale, you're pulling the cylinder in. As you exhale, you're pushing it out. Let's do that for a little bit. Now see if you can play with these energies. Go back and forth between the two. Breathing in, expanding the cylinder. Breathing out, contracting the cylinder. Breathing in, contracting the cylinder. Breathing out, expanding the cylinder. Just go back and forth. Play with it a little bit. Now allow the two movements to happen simultaneously. Your column of light expands and contracts at the same time. Forget the breath at this point, just let it happen. No difference between the inhale and the exhale. No difference between the expansion and the contraction. They happen simultaneously. Allow yourself now to receive a message. It may be from Horus, it may be from Sobek. They may each have a message for you. Just open yourself up and allow yourself to receive. The message may come in the form of a word, a sentence, an image, a memory, a color, a symbol. And so let yourself keep experiencing that feeling of simultaneous contraction and expansion. This is the point where the young and the old king are in communion with each other. This is the point of birth. This is the point of death. This is the point where the opposites reconcile and where they dissolve, where the illusion of separation evaporates away, and we see only the oneness of all things. Let yourself experience this. You are joined now by Isis, Queen Mother of Heaven, she who is with us through every process of transformation and change. She extends her beautiful rainbow wings wide. She wraps them around you, around your column of light, around Sobek and Horus, around your gift, your message, your experience. She pulls it all close. She uses her magic to encode this experience in your cellular structure, in your DNA, so that you remember what unity is. So that even as we walk through our journey in life, which is a linear process, we simultaneously know it's all an illusion. Time does not exist. There is nothing opposite. It's all part of us, and we are part of it. Breathe that truth in and anchor it in your body. Nice deep breath. Come back into the room. Thank you. Happy solstice.